Well, welcome to another edition of our podcast called Is This a Thing? My name is Jay Sokol. I'm the Communications Director for the City of College Station. And my guest today is Wade Barkman, owner and executive chef at the Republic Steakhouse at Chimney Hill, and that's where we are right now. Wade, how you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah.
Very well. Yeah.
Thanks for allowing us to come invade your space.
Absolutely.
Do you ever
my
come?
pleasure.
Do you ever come here during the middle of the day?
A lot more recently, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, okay, and we're going to get to that because there's a lot to talk about. But I want to really turn the clock back. And for people who don't know who you are or your background, how you got here, and what the Republic is all about, I'd like you to kind of start from the beginning. So who are you and what is your story?
My name is Wade Barkman. I came to A&M as an undergrad, actually transferred in from playing a bunch of junior college baseball teams and came to that road of take some scholarships to go play at places you don't want degrees from or use your brains and come to A&M. And obviously came to A&M and being an out-of-stater at the time, there weren't a ton of out-of-staters. A&M was just one of those things where I'm like, I only applied to one place and got in and wanted the degree, and my parents, being serial entrepreneurs and highly educated, said, do you need to get a real degree before you go to culinary school? So that's kind of where I started to get here. So,
well, how did A&M even get on your radar?
So my mother has a PhD in 18th century women's literature and gave a...
That's weird because I do too.
That's no one should. So as I think 9th or 10th grade, she was giving speeches everywhere, and I didn't go to any of them, but she went to every 40 some odd different universities giving speeches on 18th century women's literature. I went to none of them, but her best friend at the time, during master's and PhD at UNM in Albuquerque, was a hardcore Texas Aggie. I mean, bloodline, everybody was Ags.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that was. And so, needless to say, I came to the speech, snuck out of the speech to not embarrass her or myself. And at Rudder Tower, I saw the women at the MSC, and I said, yeah, A&M, let's do it.
This place is for me.
This is a great idea. So that's honestly, I love the tradition of it. I love the story behind it, and I love the ring, the idea of the ring. And I didn't have a clue at that time how powerful it was.
So did you have an idea then that you wanted to stay here even after school?
I didn't stay here after school.
Okay.
No, it's kind of a cool thing about College Station is a lot of people now are, but in my day it was vans packed, you're ready to roll.
Right.
Thank you for the degree, I'm out.
Sure.
So
sure.
It's right after A&M, went to culinary school, and I think 30 days later I started at CIA in New York at Poughkeepsie, Hyde Park. So. No, I didn't want to stay at all, but I had nothing to stay for. There wasn't a ton of, I had to go to culinary school, honestly, was the main reason. So.
And about what year was this?
That would have been December of 2000.
Okay.
In December of 2000, graduated CIA, Culinary Institute of America in 2002, did my externship in the interim of that program in Napa, and had a bunch of job offers in New York City, and my buddy told me that $80,000 in New York City is take the other job offers, and I had a bunch of offers in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And one in particular was my connection with a guy in culinary school that his best buddy was the food and beverage director at Caesar's Palace. So turning down all other job offers, I thought I already had the job, and showed up to Caesar's Palace, blown off for the first interview, second interview, third interview, finally called down there and said, hey, mind you, I'd already signed a lease, turned it down all my other jobs for a job I thought I already had.
Right.
And this is my good Aggie story, because of all people, that the restaurant business and Texas A&M generally don't have much tie.
Okay.
So I didn't think that the doors opening for Ags and that whole story would have any bearing on my career. Well, as I'm turned down for, I think, at least the third, if not the fourth interview for a job I thought I already had, I kind of plead with the lady and say, hey, is there any way I can bring you my resume? Because at that time, I'm certainly young and cocky, and I'm like, it's a good resume. I don't even know the job I'm supposed to have. I just thought I had one.
Right.
And she looks at culinary school, sommelier's degree, Napa Valley, all this different stuff that should apply to getting the job. And she said, "Oh, you're an Aggie." Well, and of course I flashed the ring and said, "Yeah, of course I'm an Aggie," and thinking, sweet. She wasn't an Aggie, but everyone in her family was an Ag. So literally 5 minutes after turning me down for the third interview, hits the intercom and says, "Hey, you ready for this interview?" He's playing solitaire. My connection is playing solitaire, and I'm blown off for the third because I'm not supposed to. You weren't supposed to. That guy had 14,000 employees or something, so he doesn't hire entry-level guys like me at the time. So, and that was kind of how I got into Caesars. And
so flashy resume doesn't matter. Aggie ring, that's what gets you in.
well, yeah, it's not supposed to do that in food and beverage because there aren't any Aggies, and it's just not business, engineering, any of the other stuff that A&M absolutely opens doors for. But a restaurant guy, that's not usually how it works. So
Okay, so your career track from between then and now, how did that evolve?
Did 3 years at Caesars, and then Steve Wynn is one of those guys that he is the paradigm shift. Like I don't know how that town changes so often that I assume he still is, but for about 30 years, whatever he did, the entire city of Las Vegas shifted.
I see.
And so when he opened up Bellagio, he tends to build up properties, sell them, make a ton, sit back, design a new one, build it, sell a ton, or build it up. And that's when he was opening the Wynn. And so he tends to go out and find the his top crew, and he pays you more than you should be paid, and everybody jumps and the entire city shifts. And then those jobs. So the reason I call him a shift is that he takes the best, moves them over to his new property, just like he did at the previous property, and then everyone kind of shifts around. So
I see.
3 years at the Wynn, and then told my parents I'd have my first restaurant by the time I turned 30. And when they remind you that by 30 means before you turn 30, you put in your notice, and everyone says you're leaving the Wynn for where?
Right.
And Houston, Dallas, awesome. Like, I'm such a hardcore Ag. It was a really good excuse to get to come back to College Station because I enjoyed it, and I don't have any. It's small enough but large enough. It's educated. It fits with everything that I'm about.
So the year is what? And you came back here
2000, late 2006.
And in late 2006, you hit the ground in College Station, and then what?
Wondered what I was doing.
Yeah.
Why I did what I just did, but found this location and looked all over town. In fact, there's several different spots in town that I'd looked at, and then stumbled into this one. And this was a very interesting space because it was This is the fourth rendition of a restaurant in this space, but the previous three, the first one being the Confederate House in '83. Had a 2 to 3 year run, a bunch of Aggies. It was a spinoff of a restaurant in Houston, and they wanted to have a restaurant in College Station.
Okay.
Well, I don't know everything what happened, but too many chiefs, not enough Indians, too many owners, nobody pays.
Right.
Tends to not make for a successful restaurant anyway.
Okay.
So they had a 2 to 3 year run, went out of business, sat vacant for 2 to 3 years. The next place being kind of questionable as to whether it was here or not, and there's certain debate about that.
What was it called?
From what I've heard, it was called Cafe d'Amérique, and there's a lot of people that say that did not exist, and there are a few that swear that it did. So I was before my time here, and
Maybe it did. I don't remember the name, but maybe it was here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And if I were betting based on just years of people debating that, I think it didn't exist. But man, it's multiple people said that it did. So,
Okay.
And if it did, it must have been a very short run. So after that, it was Rembrandt's, which a lot of people remember.
I remember that.
Yeah, 2 to 3-ish. I don't know. It might have been a little bit longer there. Went out of business, sat dead for a little bit. Then a place called The Tavern came in.
Okay.
My understanding, same sort of deal, 2 to 3 year run. They went out of business, and then kind of cool for what I came into in '90. They went out of business in '99, and I signed the lease to take this over in 2006. So between 99 and 2006, it was like the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. It's trapped in time because they literally, looks like they closed down one night, locked the doors, killed the power. There's still to-go food and remnants of literally as if, like what we see right here, last night, locked the doors, done.
There was no clean up and clean out.
Nothing. And so, I mean, that was part of
Nice.
taking over. And it was certainly, this location has always been kind of interesting because on a map, it's perfect. It's a university address, even though anybody that knows this location, it's really not. It's kind of sitting on the side street of Taro, but proximity to Bryan through 29th Street,
Right.
Taro, to campus to Highway 6. It's perfectly centrally located. It's close enough to campus, but not sitting on top of it. And it's right near all the restaurants and the hotels, and it's a gorgeous location. Building hasn't always been that gorgeous, but
Well, and that's something I want to talk to you about. Is there has been so much growth around you
Mm-hmm.
and so much change around you, and this was Chimney Hill was full at some point, and then it wasn't.
Yep.
And it's been in a state of decline. But you have stayed here. I'm guessing you could have picked up and gone anywhere, but you decided to stay in this location. Why did you stay, even under duress and chaos and all that kind of stuff? Why was it so important to stay right here?
I don't know. This development has always been a very interesting thing because when we signed up in 2006, it was 14 tenants, pretty much full. And then as they start to drop like flies and not get re-signed, a lot of them would have released and re-signed, but didn't. And so it's kind of it's an interesting sign of, hey, it's much easier to just wipe the slate clean if there's nobody still existing. Any existing leases, but I signed up in late 2006 with a 10-year lease, or 5 and a 5, I guess, with a 5-year option. So, exercised the 5-year option, and so then when the owner of the property and the first development team came in, and it's been a interesting. We'll just say it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah.
Because the first development team couldn't really quite get it off the ground. So the property owner got the property back, deed in lieu of foreclosure, but didn't want it back necessarily. And I don't know if I'm speaking for them, but I can certainly read tea leaves. Yeah. All the while, I really liked where my future location has always been, and it's been about a 4-year. I hate saying debacle, but it's kind of been a
Right.
debacle.
Yeah.
And loved my location because it's same reason. The best thing about the new piece of dirt versus where I'm at now is that everything else still holds true. Close enough, but far enough to campus, on university, up on a hill. The Hilton is, I think, 13, 14-story building, and we look visually half as high, and it's a 1-story building because we're
Right.
on a hill and they're kind of in a hole. So just a big fan of the address and the fact that this is 10 years of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and getting a chance to move it 400 feet is a very unique thing in the restaurant business. You normally move it to a different part of town, different
Right.
city, different state. Moving it 400 feet is truly a recreation. And taking everything that's here and making it better.
So before we talk about the new place,
Sure.
For those who may not have experience in this current location,
Sure.
tell people what this
Shame on
restaurant.
them.
Yeah, exactly. You had 10 years, people.
That's right.
Tell people what this restaurant is all about and what they experience here.
Sure. So coming into this space, as dilapidated as it was, probably where the hostess podium is now there's no power and there's fly tape and it's just decayed to say the least. About 15 feet into the restaurant, I say, crap, it's a steakhouse. And I said crap because I've never done steakhouses. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm not the biggest fan of them, certainly 10 years ago.
Right.
And so then I had to say, well, staying in business is much more important than, if you want to open a taco shop and there's 80 taco shops, you can still win, but man, it's tougher to get in a fist fight with 80 people. You're going to be sore. You can still win. But I said, well, what does the town need? That's more important to me than give them what they need, and then I get to stay in business and keep playing restaurant and not have to get a real job. So the town needed a fine dining steakhouse. So I said, well, seems like a no-brainer. It's College Station. It's beef country. There's no fine dining steakhouse. Well, I guess we're doing a steakhouse.
There you go.
And then I had to kind of self-analyze and say, well, what is it about a steakhouse that you don't like? Because I like eating steak and potatoes. I like wine. I like whiskey. I like cocktails. It's, from an operation standpoint, it's a cool, macho, sexy vibe. But the real reason I've never been a huge fan of typical steakhouses is they're very predictable.
Yeah.
Pick a steakhouse in whatever city, and I'll tell you 15 menu items right now. I don't need to know the state or the restaurant, because you go to a steakhouse, you expect to see wedge, lobster bisques, crab cakes, shrimp, steak on a plate, choose your sides, got to have a baked potato. There's certain things you have to have.
Right.
I never worked in a steakhouse. I had to pull some shifts at steakhouses in Las Vegas that were not my steakhouses on other people's days off. So, but I've just never been a fan of them. And so the reason that this restaurant has kind of turned out like it has is that I said, well, it's a steakhouse. So it has to seem like a steakhouse, act like a steakhouse, but how would you do a steakhouse if you had your way? And, I had my way to get to do a steakhouse the way I wish all steakhouses were. Heavy, a lot of live music, big cocktail scene, tons of wines, and, gigantic whiskey list at this point. But
And that's been a successful formula for 10 years.
It has.
But here's the thing. So I have to think that the restaurant business is a hard business to be in, probably anywhere, but in this town it seems to be a hard business to be in. And in all the years that you've been in operation, there have been, I'm sure, dozens and dozens of restaurants of different kinds that have come and gone because there's one or more elements hasn't worked, hasn't been right.
That's right.
So what did you get right that's allowed you to be here for 10 years? All the things you just laid out?
It's funny. I'm sure there's a ton of people that have said, oh, I'd love to do the restaurant business because it's I don't know what people think it is, but I wouldn't wish this business on anybody because if you want to do it, you're going to do it. And I can't imagine doing anything else because to me it's my playground. I get to talk about 400 whiskeys, 700 liquors, 300 different wines, food, booze, design, politics, sports. It's fascinating to me, and I get to throw a party for a living. So, but I would not wish this business on anybody because it's crazy hours. It's incredibly challenging. So if you're not really a jack of all trades, which they say, of course, jack of all trades, master of none. As far as I'm concerned, you better be a jack of all trades. We joked earlier, the HR, the schmooze, the booze, the wine, the front of the house, back of the house, the top of the house, janitor, landscaper.
You're everything.
If you don't have your hands in all of it, you can still survive. There's tons of people that are much better than I am at doing that, but this is an operation that we have no management.
Yeah.
It's me and the crew. And so it's kind of fun because I joke that we have no management, but we have 25 managers. It's just not their title. It's kind of like Braveheart going into battle. It's not the best way to run a military. There's a reason that the general goes to the back.
Yeah.
Because generally, if you're leading the charge, you're the first one to get shot. But that's kind of how it's always run here. So it works so far.
Okay, so this has been part one of the history, your personal history, how you got here, what this restaurant is all about, how you've persevered through all the changes around you. So now let's talk about this thing that's starting to jut out of the ground vertically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you said 400 feet away. Is that right?
I think so. I've guessed that out.
So-
I should probably get an accurate number.
So as you and I are talking, the bones are up. I mean, we
Yeah.
see steel beams, slabs in, parking lots in. They're working fast.
Yep.
And fortunately, we've had some good weather days to do it. What is going on 400 feet away, and how is that going to be different than what you've had for 10 years?
The cool thing about that space is that this is 5,000 square feet, just shy. The new one is 7,800 square feet, but you'll notice that there'll be a secondary sharing on the same slab. It's a secondary restaurant. So we have two restaurants. One is the Republic Steakhouse being recreated.
Yeah.
That's 7,800 square feet. And then next door is a place called Primrose Path. It's essentially a gastro-pub wine bar, 1,700 square feet, but two completely different concepts, two completely different interiors, staff, everything is different, sharing a slab, kind of feeding each other back and forth, and it's the yin to the yang of the Republic.
Okay, well, let's start with the Republic.
Sure.
Because you've built a loyal following, and people know what to expect when they walk in, both from a physical space standpoint and what to expect on the menu. What's going to be different about this new space?
So when given the opportunity to recreate something, it's kind of like me saying, hey, I got a plane, where do you want to go?
Yeah.
It almost freezes you because you say, well, man, there's a ton of places I want to go. So getting to recreate a restaurant, you can change anything you want. But in reality, I built this and love this. I'm a huge fan. If I don't enjoy where I'm at, then my crew won't enjoy where they're at. And if we don't enjoy it, how on earth is the guest expected to enjoy it? And so I went through a few little, renditions of how would you change this restaurant, but, kind of listening to we have some extreme loyal customers. Our regulars, the term regular in a restaurant is pretty, it depends on your definition. Sometimes a regular in Las Vegas is that they come in once a month.
Yeah.
If that's a regular at this restaurant, we have 2,000 regulars. So ours are 1 to 2 to 3 days a week, 2 to 3 to 4 days a month, come in all the time. So you got to listen to your, everyone has input, and you need to put it all together. But what a lot of people have said is, to quote most of them, it's kind of, when you hear it, it's an interesting way that a lot of people have said, well, you're not going to change it, are you? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I am. But I think what that sentiment is, they like what they have. Well, and as do I. So it's kind of been a fun thing to take every single little detail of this restaurant. And I'm saying, you can't give me 3 years to obsess about something and not just. My wife is a saint. We'll put it that way. She deals, and my architect. So, but they, you get to take every single little detail of this restaurant and make it better and improve it and tweak it and improve it and tweak it but stay very true to what we are.
Right.
And it's kind of been fun because had it been built on time, it's only a couple, I think 3 years behind. Had it been built on time, it would have been very cool. Now if it's not cool, I have no one to blame at all. I mean, because it's obsessive to the nth degree. So
your loyal followers, your loyal customers, they will have something that's familiar to them, makes them feel comfortable, but it'll be improved upon.
no question.
Okay.
It's kind of like if you get the 1990 4Runner that I drove in college, and then you get the 2018, you would expect it to be better in every single way,
Okay. All right.
just like that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more about Primrose Path. What's that experience going to be like, and what's the intent of that?
So Primrose Path is kind of a fun thing. It's actually most of my career before the steakhouse business was what Primrose Path is. So a lot of Italian, a lot of Spanish, a lot of Southern French, true Mediterranean. And Mediterranean kind of has a misperceptions at times I think people forget sometimes that Mediterranean, there are about 18 countries on the Mediterranean. But when you have a little bit of tapas influence, a little bit of cicchetti, which essentially is Italy's version of the same sort of idea of smaller food. I have a ton of background in Italian again, Spanish, Moroccan, a little bit of Greek, and a heavy wine and beer focus. So the process of the entire restaurant has been kind of fun because the idea of the name Primrose Path is it's kind of my story or my path through this business. And so the idea of when you go to a restaurant, if it's a wine and beer driven Mediterranean restaurant, you can go and be super healthy and be light and airy. You can eat a bunch of stuff that you probably want to eat, a lot more deep, heavy, fried. So you can take your own Primrose Path through the entire concept and through the entire experience. And it's kind of a nod to my Primrose Path through the restaurant business and, quite honestly, this development. So,
is it strictly going to be an indoor experience, or are there outdoor elements?
There certainly are. You know, what the Republic has never had intentionally, and the new one has a little bit more, but not much, is steakhouses tend to be very clubby, dark. You don't see outside. I don't want you to see outside. In this one, I don't have much to see outside. So, no natural light. I can't control the natural light, so it wants to be a very clubby steakhouse environment. Primrose Path is kind of the opposite. It's a lot of glass, a lot of brick, stone, industrial elements with a ton of divided light that, brings in, and it faces the, what would that be? I guess it faces the east, faces the west, I'm sorry. So you never get the sun in your face, and it has a pretty cool outdoor little courtyard. So just an outdoor element that, certain times of the year right now would be perfect, and I'm dreading that soon it will not be perfect. But
is there anything about this facility, this building, that you're actually going to miss, or that you're going to rip out and take with you?
You can repurpose. I think, to answer the question, there's a lot of lights, a lot of the lighting fixtures that there's no reason to not take them with you. The copper top bar itself will be repurposed, not as a copper top bar. At the new one, it will have, of course, a copper top bar, but that exact copper, there's so many stories in that copper that were stories long before I ever got here.
Yeah.
And my original, I'm glad my gut said, don't rip this out. And because it seemed like it had a lot of history in the copper. Bars are, I met my wife at this bar. I think a lot of people met their wives in this restaurant. So it has a lot of history. So I'm too much of, I don't know. I'm taking a lot of it with me, but if you overdo that, it's going to look like you repurposed it, and it will be repurposed in very clever ways.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is not a trick question. It's not a loaded question. It's an honest question.
Sure.
Through all of what you've been through, what has your experience been with the city of College Station from a development standpoint?
Sure.
Because I don't have to tell you, the city sometimes gets the reputation of being difficult to work with in this respect. So I want to know, what has your experience been?
The city does get it a negative rap, and I'd like to say that mine has been negative. It hasn't. It's been perfect. That I don't know if the stars have just aligned, but in my personal experience, a lot of the people and the powers that be come here. They like it. I think they want it to stay, and they want it to be relocated, and they want it to make this development, go. And I'd like to say that I'd love to tell you some nasty stories about the city, but they've all been really kind of cool because they're fans of the restaurant, so they keep coming in, and they I think they want to see us succeed, and you still have to go through all the same channels and do all the things that you have to do. But I think I think this restaurant's good for the community. I think that the city's looking out for everybody's best interest, and sometimes just because somebody tells you no doesn't mean that it wasn't probably the best thing for all parties involved. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, because so far the people I have asked that question to have all said basically what you just said, that it's been a good experience. The city seems to be working with us and wants success. And so I'm glad to hear you say that, because you very easily could have told me otherwise.
Sure. I think if you take a conservative approach to making sure, having lived in Las Vegas and fortunately leaving as that town really just blew up, and not in a healthy way, and then collapse, not in a healthy way. It's smart to just intentionally, strategically grow and be very conservative about the overall plan. And that's been my experience. So,
Okay, so your target opening dates for the Republic and Primrose Path?
I'm going to be very vague and tell you fall of 2018.
Okay.
The Republic's opening will be preceded by the Primrose Path about a month later. Whenever we open Republic, Primrose Path will be a month later. So,
Okay.
And that's going to be in the fall. Realistically, I don't know exactly what month. I've noticed that you don't get any credit for pinpointing a date.
Right.
But if you're 2 to 3 months behind on your claim, that tends to rile people up. So I'll say fall of 2018.
Fair enough. Final question. You are a trained executive chef.
Sure.
A lot of years in the business. You run a fantastic operation here. What is your guilty pleasure in terms of food? Do you run through Taco Bell? Do you run through Long John
wow.
Silver's? What's your guilty pleasure?
Pizza Hut Supreme Pan Pizza, no question. So
That's your go-to.
no question. And so we get to eat we get to eat anything you want, and sometimes you just want comfort food. And comfort food generally in this part of the country where I grew up, it tends to be certain regional things. Well, comfort food for me is just a perfectly made pizza. And I don't know what it is about the camera is watching me say this, but Pizza Hut pan pizza is maybe the best pizza in the world. I've eaten pizza everywhere, and so I think that's my answer. So
That's the most passionate you've been over the past 30 minutes.
I did light up a little bit. I'm thinking about it. I'm getting hungry.
Wade, thanks for talking with us.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.